I'm pleased to present it to you this evening, and it is why your next car should be electric, because it is now time. So I'm going to cover tonight a number of things. First, I'm going to deal with the myths of driving an electric car that include that they're too expensive and they just shift the pollution from the tailpipe to the stack of coal-fired power plant. Charging an electric vehicle is a hassle. The range is too short. You can't take a road trip. I'm sure many of you have heard those things. But I'm also going to talk about the benefits of driving electric, which are many, including there are no emissions. So upstream carbon dioxide emissions are already half of what they are for a gasoline car, and they will continue to drop as we convert our electricity generation to clean renewable energy. There is a tax credit still available for buying an electric car that ranges from $2,500 to $7,500. It is much lower in terms of fuel cost per mile to drive electric than it is on gas. The maintenance is dramatically lower because of the fewer number of moving parts primarily. They're very high performance. Modern electric vehicles are super quick. They're the fastest production cars on the planet. They are safer, no gas tank to explode, they're quiet, and they will help keep oil in the ground. And I want to give credit to a number of the concepts in this presentation to Tony Seba, who is a real visionary about the future, and he has a great website, a lot of YouTube videos. He gives talks all over the world. In fact, Amsterdam, this one in Colorado, he's been to Southeast Asia. He wrote a book called Clean Disruption, Energy and Transportation. Highly recommend you to check him out. Go look at his YouTube videos. He is a true visionary. So I'm going to talk first about some examples of electric vehicles that are on the market today. When I bought my first electric car, the Tesla Model S in January 2013, there were literally a handful of EVs that you could buy, if that. Mitsubishi, IMEV, Tesla had just ended its production on the Roadster. I think the Volt had just come out, the Nissan Leaf, and that was about it. And the number of models has just exploded since then. So this is the number of electric vehicles that are coming on the market available now through 2020, and we had all of the ones that are highlighted in red boxes and more out in the parking lot today. I think we had, 16 EVs, including a motorcycle and an electric bike. So EVs are really coming into their own. There are two main types of electric vehicles. There are battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And the two types are basically whether or not they have a gasoline engine backup to the electric motor. Battery electric vehicle, or BEV, is 100% battery electric, no gas tank, no gas engine. Examples include the Nissan Leaf, all of the Teslas, the Chevy Bolt, etc. Ranges up to 310 miles on a single charge now, and typically you charge the battery at home, in your garage, and on the road at public charging stations or at proprietary charging stations. The second type is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, or PHEV, and that means it's a hybrid of battery electric power and a gasoline engine power. And there are different configurations by which the gasoline engine works in concert with the electric motor. They typically have smaller battery packs, electric range of maybe 20 to 80 miles of range. You recharge the battery from the wall plug or the charger, or from the onboard gasoline engine. And so examples include the Prius plug-in hybrid, which charges the battery pack to run the car, or the Chevy Volt, as opposed to the Bolt, BMW i3 with what it calls a range extender. So there are many different ways that you can have a gasoline engine work in concert with the electric motor, but basically two types, full battery or a hybrid. The top sellers in 2017 were the ones on this chart. Tesla Model X and S, followed by the Chevy Volt, down through the Nissan Leaf, and then a number of others. Those first 6 there accounted for 65% of sales, and the next 4, I think, were the next 15%, and then there's a bunch of others. smaller market share. The battery EVs that are widely available in 2018 include the ones on this page. This is not all of them, but these are some of the main ones. The Chevy Bolt, Nissan Leaf, a new one called the Hyundai Ioniq, BMW i3, which we had outside, the Kia Soul EV. Daimler has an electric version of their smart car, and all of the Teslas. And you can get a battery electric vehicle for as low as $30,000 down to $24,000 today, brand new, before the tax credit, right? So the tax credit gives you additional cost benefit, driving down the cost even below those numbers. And just by point of comparison, per the Kelley Blue Book, the average price of a U.S. gasoline new car in January 2018, $36,000. So we are right there in terms of electric vehicles competing on price with gasoline cars. Plug-in hybrids available in 2018 include the ones on this page, and again, these are prices before the tax credit: the Prius Prime, the Chevy Volt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And prices range similar to what they were on the previous page, maybe a little bit higher on average if you take the Teslas out of the mix. This is the federal EV tax credit, $2,500 to $7,500, depending basically on the electric range. So the larger the battery pack, the greater the electric range, the higher the EV tax credit that you can get. They are still available. And the way the law was written for the tax credit is that the tax credit rolls off after the manufacturer has shipped 200,000 units or more into the U.S. market. And so Tesla is approaching that point today, as is Nissan, I think, and some others. But at least for the current term, for this year, this EV tax credit should apply to all Teslas purchased in the U.S. It'll roll off towards the end of the year, and you can check it. So that's how you apply for the tax credit. And this is a great chart, and I'm going to go through every single line here just to show you all the plug-in vehicles. I'm just showing you this to give you a sense of the tremendous number of choices that you have in the market. And then they've taken this data and put it into some charts here. The size of the bar is the electric range, and then these are the models, and then they show you the prices there. The prices from this website are after the tax credit is applied, so substantially lower. So lots of electric vehicle choices, plug-in hybrids, and full EVs. Okay. There is also the used car market. So I just went on CarMax and looked up what is available in Albuquerque, and you can find electric vehicles as low as $7,000 on the used car market for a Mitsubishi i-MiEV, Nissan Leafs, Ford Focus Electric, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to get into the electric vehicle market, you can get something even less expensive used. Electric vehicles are fundamentally low maintenance. Just take a look at the number of moving parts that are in a typical gas engine, and this is just a 3-cylinder gas engine versus an electric motor. The Tesla Model S has one moving part in the motor. It is the coil. So that's all that moves. And so, you know, no spark plugs, no head gaskets, no timing change, none of that stuff to repair. And so they are just fundamentally more reliable, less maintenance, which is great for the owner. It is not so good for the car dealers, because car dealers tend to make their profit margin on maintenance of vehicles that they sell and then bring back into their shop. And that is going to be a bit of a transition for auto dealers. Future EV models are growing tremendously. Manufacturers continue to announce many, many more electric vehicle models coming up in the future. Volvo says all their new models will be electric or hybrid by 2019, next year. VW says their entire 300 car lineup is going to be electric by 2030, and all the way in between. So The market is shifting clearly to electric vehicles for all of the reasons that I'm sharing with you tonight. They are just better in every single dimension, with the possible exception of range and cost. And those things are changing so rapidly, improving so rapidly, that within a couple of years there will be no reason whatsoever to buy anything but an electric vehicle. And that's what will happen to the market. The electric cost per mile to drive is less than half per mile on electric versus on gasoline. And I just did this calculation. That's a little spreadsheet that I made. Kilowatt hours per mile is about, 0.33 kilowatt hours per mile for an electric vehicle on average, maybe 25 miles per gallon for the average electric or gasoline car. At $2.50 a gallon, you're looking at 10 cents a mile, you're looking at 4 cents a mile at 12 cents a kilowatt hour, which is what you pay as a home user from our friends at P&M. So there is cost, just the driving, day-to-day cost of driving your car, less than half on an electric vehicle. Charging an electric vehicle, EV owners know that they charge their vehicles at home. You plug in your car at your garage at night, it takes you a few seconds to do that, and it is full when you come in the morning. 85% or so of Leaf and Volt owners do that today. 51% of US households have a garage or a carport. So that's the addressable market today. Renters, it is still a bit of a challenge. There are not yet charging stations for people that rent their domicile, but that will happen as the market moves, and apartment owners are going to say, you want to sell your unit, rent out your unit, you're going to have the capability to charge your car in their parking lot, and it will happen. Public charging stations on the road, DC fast chargers for road trips, and I'm going to talk about that in the coming slides. So, where do you charge your car? How fast does it charge? Some of the most common questions that I get asked when I share the information about my electric car. And the answer is I plug it into my garage at night. Every time I go home, I just plug it in. It takes 5 seconds or less. My car charges at a rate of about 60 miles of range per hour with a Tesla fast charger. With a 240 volt dryer plug, which you can install in your house with an electrician's help, the rate's about 30 miles of range in an hour of charge. And Tesla's has a whole over 1,200 supercharger stations around the US and also around the world that charge 170 miles of range in 30 minutes. So that is the wave of the future. You can go on a road trip, and I have on a Tesla, and it is not hard. It is just enabled. So examples of home chargers for other models. So you've got the i3, the Chevy Volt, and both, and the Nissan Leaf. That's what their home charging stations look like. It is an option with every electric vehicle that you can buy.
But you don't have to have them.
You don't have to have it. You can just use your mobile charger and plug it into your wall socket, and that will work. Yes?
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could put one in, but I haven't needed it.
You haven't needed it yet. There are basically 3 levels of electric vehicle chargers, levels 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is your 120 volt outlet. Level 2 is like a dryer plug. Level 3 is a fast DC charger that you would not install at home, but you would find on the road if you're going on a road trip. And they charge at different rates of speed. This is some examples in Albuquerque. There are public charging stations on 3rd and Terrace. Right there, that's what they look like. P&M's Greenlots DC fast chargers have been installed in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. There's a handful or more of them, and you can see how fast they will charge your car here. And so the electric vehicle charging infrastructure is starting to be installed around the country. Bill, this is a question that you asked. So what kind of applications are there where you can find electric charging stations, public charging stations? And so there are many. PlugShare happens to be this one. PlugShare is nice because it is not only commercial charging stations, but also kind homeowners that have installed a charging station and put it on the web and say, yep, if you call me up ahead of time, I'll let you charge. And in my house. Just, give me some warning. But ChargePoint, EV Connect, ChargePoint, or Charge Hub, Plug in America, EV Go, there are quite a few. And they all have smartphone apps. You just download it and plug in your zip code where you're at. It'll tell you where your charging stations are. You can map road trip routes from point A to point B, and it'll tell you what the charging station's situation looks like from here to there.
Tom, could you go back and just point out a few of the charging stations in New Mexico from remembered one?
Sure, if I can get my mouse to work. So, so within Albuquerque, there are easily a dozen public charging stations, probably more, different locations, some with multiple stalls. P&M has installed some DC fast chargers through green lots at like Burlington Coat Factory on Montgomery and what is that, San Mateo. Outside, yeah.
So about
Dave and Buster's
Dave and
Grill
Buster's,
outside
O'Neill's.
of O'Neill's Pub and yeah.
Sprouts in Santa Fe.
Sprouts in Santa Fe on Zeffirino
So
Drive.
there's one at Sprouts in Santa Fe, there's also another mall in Santa Fe.
Yep.
There's a fast charger.
Yeah, there's a Tesla fast charger.
Kiwa gas station halfway along.
Yeah.
There's a DC fast charger.
So, I mean,
And we'll probably hear from Andrew here, who will talk a little bit about Go Station.
yeah, there's lots of them.
We're gonna need you to move that to the top of those bullets. Then.
Okay, all right. And then there is Tesla's fast charger infrastructure, which is by far the most sophisticated and well-developed in the country, in the world, because they've been installing them at a rapid rate since 2012. And there are now, as of this month, 1,210 supercharger locations around the country. They tend to be along interstate highways at a rate of about every 150 miles or so. So easy increments of distance to travel. You stop in, go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee or a drink, and plug in your car, and 30 minutes later you have an extra 170 miles of range that's more than what you have. So there are 10 charging stations in New Mexico from Tesla, and plans this year to install 4 more, and they just continue. And they are in Canada and Mexico, all over Europe, China, Southeast Asia, Australia. They're installing them all over. Yes, Bill?
What's the cost?
For a Model S or Model X owner, charging at a Tesla supercharger station is included in the price of the car. For the new Model 3s, I'm not sure what they're charging per kilowatt hour, but it is guaranteed to be still less to drive electric than it would be on gas.
What if you buy the car used?
If you buy the car used, I don't know if it's transferable. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Are you in that market? Okay, I'll find out for you. It may be transferable from one to another. So these are the superchargers in New Mexico. That's what the Farmington charger station looks like. They tend to put them in the parking lots of hotels, or there's in the Chili's restaurant in Albuquerque is one. So 6 stalls.
The one in Las Vegas, New Mexico, is in front of a motel.
Motel,
I forget the name.
yeah.
Just happened to see it.
Right.
Well,
Hilton Garden Inn and others. Yeah.
I noticed, I visited all the Tesla and all the fast DC charging stations that are for GM. I did all of them on a recent trip to Denver. And the nice thing about the Teslas is they're really close to the freeway. They're all within a quarter, half mile of the interchange.
Yeah, by design.
There's one in
They're intended for road trips, yeah.
The one in Las Vegas was the first building off the interstate.
There you go. First building off the interstate. All right, I'm going to keep going. So range anxiety is one of those things that is keeping people, or has kept people, from taking the leap to buying an electric vehicle. I'm not confident that I'm going to be able to get to my destination on the range in my electric vehicle. So there are ways to address that. Tesla does it very well. Basically, you charge up your car, you punch in on the navigation system your destination. It knows how far it is from where you are. It knows about how much battery range you're going to consume getting from here to there. It will calculate your remaining battery effective range remaining when you arrive, And if it's not going to be enough, it'll route you to a supercharger station along the way. And then as you continue on and drive your trip, it will continuously update your remaining range for every instant you drive. And so you'll know by looking at that point how, what percentage of your battery charge you'll have when you get there. And you can modulate that by your speed. So if you're going 85 miles an hour on the freeway, that tends to be a little bit faster than what Tesla calculates the consumption for. And if you're worried about not having enough when you get there, you could dial it back and go, 75 or 70 or 65 if you're really worried. And I have done that. I've driven to Denver, I've driven to Las Cruces, it works. So, and the newer electric vehicles are, have a range in excess of 200, sometimes up to 300 miles, and it just is not going to be a consideration very short. So that's range anxiety. The grid fundamentally is getting cleaner. So this addresses the question of carbon pollution by driving an electric mile. And as coal-fired power plants continue to close and are replaced by natural gas and wind and solar, which is growing tremendously in recent times, the grid in terms of carbon pollution per mile just gets cleaner and cleaner. So 268 coal-fired power plants have closed since 2010. P&M has announced that they're planning to shutter San Juan in 2022 and get out of their fraction of the Four Corners plant in 2031. So the New Mexico grid will get cleaner still. And of course, we want P&M to replace that coal-fired power with solar and wind, not gas-fired power. Hear that, P&M? So that would be helping us to get cleaner and cleaner and reduce carbon pollution. This is some information published by the Union of Concerned Scientists that shows you by comparing an electric vehicle to what an equivalent gas car would have to get mileage-wise to achieve the same level of carbon pollution region by region. So here in New Mexico, we're in this AZ&M region that says based on the current carbon pollution level per electric vehicle mile, you would need a gasoline car that got 49 miles a gallon to achieve the same level of carbon pollution that there was before. And they did this first in 2009. Actually, this is the 2009 number set, excuse me. If you flip over to what it looks like in 2016, it's gone from 49 miles per gallon to now 59 miles a gallon. So in just those, 7 years, the grid has cleaned up very substantially, going from the equivalent of 49 miles a gallon to 59 miles a gallon in terms of carbon pollution per mile. So we are cleaning up the grid, reducing carbon pollution as coal-fired power plants, which are the dirtiest, continue to close, and this trend will continue. And so the benefit of driving an electric car is you'll be driving a car that will be cleaner next year to drive than it is the year that you bought it, and it will continue to get cleaner. The fueleconomy.gov calculates some of these things. If you actually want to see grams per mile of CO2 emissions versus a gasoline car, you can calculate that here using kind of 25 mile a gallon versus an average electric car. You're looking at 220 grams per mile versus about 410 for an ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine. EV sales are growing quite dramatically in the United States, 26% increase year over year in 2017 over 2016. 200,000 electric vehicles were sold in the US, and they are now 1% of all sales. That doesn't sound like a lot, but what happens with disruptive technology transitions is once it gets to about the 1% level, it starts to really take off, and when it gets to about 10%, it converts extremely rapidly. And I'll show you what those S-curves look like. But in any case, so this is what EV sales have looked like for the last several years. Continues to grow quite rapidly. That's in the US. Worldwide, electric vehicle sales are taking off absolutely dramatically. So look at China. China is building more electric vehicles than the US and Europe and I guess the rest of the European states combined. And so people's impression of what's happening in China is largely out of date because they have gone after electric vehicles and investments in solar and wind and renewable energy technology absolutely tremendously, and it's growing at a huge rate, 73% a year in China. It grew 150% in Japan, 39% in the last year in Europe, and as I said, the US was about 27%. So what is happening worldwide is electric vehicles are catching on even faster than they are in the US. So this is what an S-curve adoption looks like for disruptive technologies, and this plots it back all the way from 2005 all the way to 1900, and you can see what the adoption of radios and clothes washers and dryers and air conditioning and microwaves look like, and they all follow this curve where there's the early adopters, and they work out the bugs in the technology, and it gets better and better, and when it gets to a point where it reaches what they call the influentials, we're here at the opinion leaders and early adopters level, at the 1% level, but then it takes off. And some other countries are far beyond us. Norway, electric vehicle sales are 35% of all vehicles sold. So we are on the verge of hitting this curve in the next decade. And I will show you what the implications of that are going to be. This is Bloomberg Business Week, forecasting electric vehicle sales to be 24 million by 2030. I think that is low. It might be twice that. And just by comparison, total vehicle sales in 2018 estimated to be about 82 million. So it's going to be a big chunk of that. And the primary factor that is keeping electric vehicle prices high is the cost of the battery. And the cost of the batteries are dropping at about 20% per year. 20% per year. And so it has reached the point now where you can now buy an electric vehicle with 200 plus miles of range for the price of the average $35,000 US car. This is a curve that Tony Seba generated about 2 or 3 years ago, projecting what the cost of an EV would look like as we go forward. And he's been pretty accurate. So we're here in 2018. In 2020, we'll see the average electric vehicle in the under $30,000 range, cheaper than the average US car. And in 2022, an electric vehicle with 200 plus mile range under $25,000, like about $22,000. At which point it just takes over the market completely. And this is an electric car that is cleaner, quieter, faster, has a Porsche performance for the cost of a Buick, costs less to drive, and costs dramatically less to maintain. It is better in every dimension than a gasoline car. And the market argument is just going to be overwhelming. And this is the price of batteries that you've been seeing dropping and dropping and dropping. This is Bloomberg reporting those numbers. That is a 20% per year rate for the cost of electrification. And so this applies not only to electric cars, but it also applies to battery storage for electricity generation. Yeah.
Given the plots you're showing, what's the argument for buying an electric car now and not waiting 2 years?
You should do it. You should do it. Anybody who can afford one should do it today. So,
not really quite an argument, but
I'm not going to push back. Yeah.
Probably
One
because of
argument
the tax
is-
incentives, the tax credits, as well as you're going to be making savings along the road by less fuel costs. So it's
Yeah, there are reasons to do it
or at
today.
least one.
It will be cheaper, right? Because the the federal tax credit incentives will roll off and go away over the course of the next couple of years. So
Sure.
that will disappear. But then again, the price of the vehicle will go down. So there was a question. Okay, so I just want to continue on the theme of battery production. So this is what the investment in worldwide lithium-ion battery production looks like. Yeah.
I will say one thing about a reason to get an electric car now.
Yeah.
They're selling like hotcakes. And, you know, if you decide to wait, well, you keep waiting.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of driving a Chevy Bolt once I went to go down the drive one. And twice I've gone down, I've gotten a call from the dealer. And by the time I made it down there, it was sold. Tesla's Model 3 is backward 18 months, right? So waiting will project more waiting. It's really cool to drive an electric car, so that's another reason. It's really pleasurable to enjoy.
Yeah,
So.
okay.
All right, so this is data reported a year ago by the Financial Times. This is what it looks like in terms of companies building lithium-ion battery gigafactories worldwide. And I just want to point out the difference in the graphic. So what's in that little box is the 2016 capacity that is online, or that was online in 2016. The forecast for 2020, right, 2 years from now, is out here. So, and every one of these little units is 1 gigawatt hour. China is investing massively in building lithium-ion battery capacity. Of all of these factories that are being built worldwide, there are 2 in the U.S. There's Tesla's Gigafactory in Nevada, outside of Reno, and then there's a LG Chem factory in Michigan. All of the rest of it is either in China, a couple in, there's one in Poland, and a couple in Southeast Asia. So I would like to report to you that the U.S. is on the leading edge of investing in this advanced technology, but we're not. Yep.
Yeah, so what do the acronyms CATL stand for?
CATL is Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited. It is a Chinese company.
Chinese company. Okay. And then how come LG Chem is listed there, I think 4 times?
Those are individual locations. So
Okay.
each one of these 1 through 13 is a different geography.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, right? Tesla's Gigafactory is only one of at least 14 megafactories being built or planned. 9 of the factories are in China, according to the Financial Times. So this, of course, has implications for fueling for gasoline cars, right? At some point, there will be enough electric vehicles on the road to put a really big dent in the demand for gasoline. And we saw what that looked like in 2014. In 2014, the demand for gasoline dropped worldwide by about 2 million barrels a day, and the price crashed from $100 a barrel down to less than 50 in less than a few months, due to a market surplus of less than 2 million gallons a day. So the question would be, when will electric vehicle production reach a point where it will put that big of a dent in the gasoline demand? Well, turns out Bloomberg did that calculation, and this is what they came up with. They said that Bloomberg will displace enough demand for 2 million barrels a day as early as 2023 if growth is 60% per year. If growth is about 45% per year, it'll be 2025. And so then the question is, what has growth been for the last few years? It's been about 58% a year. So we are tracking to very close to 2023 for when we will see a significant oil glut on the market, crashing the price of oil, which will have major implications for oil producers all over the planet, including right here in New Mexico. And we better get ready, because the New Mexico economy will not be able to stand this again. And this is not going to be a one-time crash. This is going to be the beginning of the end for the oil market, because EVs will continue until they take over 100% of the gasoline consumption, right? So that's the end of my talk. Drive electric. They're cleaner, safer, quicker, cheaper, more reliable, and they will save the planet. Thank you.
Awesome.
you okay?
I'm okay doing Q&A if you want to go on to
Okay,
some
we'll
of the other
give 5
presenters.
minutes Q&A, and then we've got some other presentations.
Okay.
I was wondering if there is, if you could just suggest a good source for literature like to hand out, like, especially like for Earth Day this Sunday.
Literature to
People-
hand out. Gosh, Union of Concerned Scientists has a really good website with good information on electric vehicles. In fact, in the backup, I put a list of this is my information sources for this presentation. So
Okay.
if you want to go visit those sites, learn all about electric vehicles. I'm not sure how many of them will have like a, one pager, but I know UCS does, and probably some others. Yes.
Tom, you might want to mention to the audience where to find the presentation.
Yeah, so I skipped that slide. So I loaded this presentation onto the web as a Google Doc. It is free for you to download. Just maybe give me some attribution if you use it. It is on the New Mexico, the website for 350 New Mexico, 350newmexico.org. Go to the resources tab, scroll down, you'll see a section that says electric vehicles right there, and it is downloadable as a Google Doc.